Two uniformed guards approached the rows of folding chairs just as the graduates began tossing their caps into the air. Amid the proud cheers and clapping parents, they moved with silent precision, eyes locked on a woman in navy blue camouflage. Her name was Lieutenant Sarah Carter, and she had just watched her only son throw his cap skyward. Then the taller guard leaned in. "Ma'am," he said, his voice low but firm, "you need to come with us now." She froze. Her smile faltered. For a second, the joy drained from her face, like sunlight behind storm clouds. Around her, cameras flashed, laughter echoed, but she was no longer in that moment. She was in the space between duty and motherhood. Again, a space she'd learned to dread. What could be so urgent now? She turned to her son, Jason, still beaming with pride. He hadn't seen them yet. Sarah Carter wasn't new to this. A decorated Navy nurse with 20 years of service, she had long mastered the art of holding it together. She'd spent countless nights in combat hospitals under the red haze of emergency lights, patching wounds, giving morphine, whispering prayers. But nothing prepared her for the quiet ache of watching her son grow up through FaceTime. She was in her dress blues today, not as an officer, but as a mother. She'd made a promise to Jason that she wouldn't miss this day, no matter what. He had begged her to be there, just this once, and for the first time in years, the timing had worked out. No deployments, no medevacs, no emergencies. Just a mother and son sitting together in a sea of families. She had her hand on the printed program, still warm from the sun. Jason had just crossed the stage, full of pride. But now that warmth was gone. The guards weren't here to congratulate. They were here to take her away. There are wounds you can't treat with stitches. Sarah knew that too well. She'd missed Jason's first steps, his first lost tooth, even his high school graduation. While other parents filmed recitals, she had been on night shifts inside surgical tents, hands stained in blood, heart heavy with guilt. Her late husband Daniel had been a Marine, killed in action when Jason was just 6. From that day forward, it was Sarah who had to be the rock. She wore the uniform for both of them. But no matter how many medals she received, the one thing she never earned was time. Time to be there. Time to explain. Time to help her son understand that every absence came with a price. She remembered the arguments, the slammed doors, the disappointment in Jason's eyes every time she left with a packed duffel. He had stopped asking when she'd be home, stopped hoping. This graduation, it wasn't just a ceremony, it was her redemption. Her chance to show him that he mattered more than any deployment ever could. And now, 2 guards, in front of everyone, like another mission pulling her away from motherhood. One of the guards leaned closer, eyes shifting between her and the crowd. "It's Commander Hayes," he said quietly. "He's insisting." Sarah's breath caught. Hayes wasn't a man who sent couriers lightly, let alone during a public event. Her pulse quickened. "Wounded incoming," came the voice over the radio. "Carter's team is already en route." The words slammed into her chest. Wounded. Incoming. That meant triage. That meant trauma. That meant now. Sarah's instincts kicked in. Assess, react, respond. But her heart stayed behind, seated beside Jason. He was still laughing with his friends, holding his diploma like a trophy. He had no idea his mother was being summoned back into the storm. She looked at the guards. "Does he know where I am?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am," one replied. "That's why it's urgent." She clenched her jaw. Her team needed her. Every second mattered, but so did this one, the one she promised she'd never leave. Sarah rose from her seat slowly, the program slipping from her lap. She scanned the crowd, spotted Jason again, now taking photos, arms slung over a friend's shoulders. He still didn't see her, still didn't know. She stepped toward the aisle, trying to memorize the moment. Then the shorter guard gently blocked her path. "Lieutenant," he said, his voice more formal now, "orders are orders." Her hand trembled as she reached for her badge. She didn't want to go. Not again. Not like this. She had just held her son in her arms. She had just watched him become a man. And now she was about to disappear from the picture. Again. She looked down, swallowed hard. The mission, the team, the wounded. Her body turned instinctively toward the exit, But before she could take another step, the air shifted. 4 men entered the hall in formation. Broad, steady, uniformed, Navy SEALs. Their boots echoed like a drumbeat across the auditorium floor. The entire room began to quiet. The applause faded. The murmurs stilled. Sarah's spine straightened. Something had changed. The SEALs didn't stop at her row. They walked right past her, up the steps, onto the stage. One of them, Senior Chief Mark Reynolds, took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, voice calm but commanding. "Pardon the interruption." Every head turned. Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Before we proceed," Reynolds continued, "there's someone in this room who deserves far more than a round of applause. She deserves our gratitude, our recognition, and our respect." He looked directly at Sarah. Lieutenant Carter, front and center. Her breath caught. This wasn't a mission. This wasn't a crisis. This was something else. She hesitated. Was this a mistake? A reprimand? The walk to the stage felt longer than any battlefield corridor. Jason stared from the crowd, confusion on his face. Reynolds stepped back and saluted. One by one, the other SEALs followed. Then he handed her the mic. "Lieutenant Carter," he said, "recently completed a classified operation where she saved the lives of 12 fellow Americans under enemy fire. The nature of her work has kept her story silent, until now." The room held its breath. Jason's jaw dropped. The silence turned reverent. Sarah looked out at the sea of faces, her sons among them. "Why now?" she whispered. Reynolds smiled. "Because your real orders were to stand here and let your son see who you truly are." Applause exploded. Jason was already sprinting up the stage. Jason crashed into her arms, wrapping her in the kind of hug she hadn't felt since he was 10 years old. She clung to him, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. Not for the lives she'd saved, not for the medal she'd earned, but for this moment, for being seen. "I didn't know," Jason whispered. "I didn't know what you'd been through." Sarah stroked his back, still shaking. "I didn't want you to carry it." The crowd rose to their feet, a standing ovation rolling like thunder across the auditorium. The SEALs stood at attention behind her, silent, solemn, proud. Jason pulled back just enough to look her in the eyes. "I'm proud of you, Mom." For the first time in her life, she felt complete. For once, she hadn't been forced to choose between duty and love. For once, the mission had been her family. For once, the sacrifice had a face, and in that moment, her son's eyes shining, she knew she'd finally bridged the impossible gap between mother and soldier. This homecoming, there are stories the world never hears. Stories tucked behind classified folders, guarded bases, and sleepless nights. But sometimes, those stories find their way into the light and remind us what quiet courage really looks like. Sarah Carter wasn't a hero because of what she wore. She wasn't honored because of how many lives she saved. She was honored because she showed up again and again, even when it broke her heart. The greatest acts of service don't always happen on the battlefield. Sometimes they happen in the small moments we fight to keep, like a graduation, like a hug, like a son finally seeing his mother not as someone who left, but someone who carried the weight of both war and love, and never let either fall. If there's one lesson in her story, it's this. Real courage is often invisible until someone steps up and makes it seen. If this story moved you, hit that like button to honor every silent sacrifice out there. Drop a respect in the comments for the nurses, the soldiers, the parents, the forgotten heroes. And remember, sometimes the strongest people aren't the ones making noise. They're the ones who carry on in silence until the world finally listens. Thank you for watching.